Hi, in this lesson I'm going to show you how to take a fragment of the melody of a song to be used as a motive for improvisation. I'm going to take it through various motivic development techniques to explore the possibilities that can be created using this short melody. The song I'm using today is Chameleon, written by Herbie Hancock, and the melody fragment I'm using is this short section of the melody. Now what is going on here? The melody of the song is using the G minor pentatonic scale, and the motive is just this, starting on a note, going 2 notes down the scale, going back up again, and finally back to the starting note. Most of the notes are 16th notes, but the last one is a little longer. When practicing using a motive like this, I like to first explore the various possibilities that can be created. First, I'm going to take a look at creative repetition. This is just using repetition in a more creative way. Any of the notes of the motive can be repeated, like the first one, the second one, and so on. I can also repeat sections of the motive, like the first 2 note section, or the second section, or I can repeat 3 note sections. I can also just even out the melody, and so on. There's a lot of possibilities here. You can also try sequencing the motive. This just means moving the motive through various notes in the scale. The original was this. I can move it up the scale, or down, and so on. It's a good idea to just explore every possible sequence of a motive before you try improvising with it. You can also try combining a few of these techniques, like repeating the first group and sequencing. Sequencing the motive here, and repeating the first group. Another thing to try out is adding approach note patterns. I can add a chromatic note before I play the motive. This just means playing the closest note below or above the motive. I can play a double chromatic, or I can add chromatic notes between the notes of the motive. Or I can repeat a note of the motive and use approach note on that. Here I repeated that note and added a chromatic note before the second repeat. There's a lot of possibilities here. Another thing to try is inverting the motive. Inverting just means flipping what is up and down of the melody. Remember, the original was just 2 notes down the scale, up and up. So the inverted motive will be 2 notes up the scale, and back again. Now let's take a look at the solo I played in the opening of this video. Remember, this is just an example of using many variations of the same motive in a solo, and you wouldn't usually use this many variations in one solo. You would add other material as well. I started by displacing the rhythm of the motive to the second 8th note of the bar, and I repeated the second note of the motive 3 times. And I added an extra note to create more variation. Then I sequenced the motive down the scale, and I repeated both the first 2 note section and the second note. And I added an extra note there as well. Then I move the motive up here, but I play into it by going up the scale first. And instead of going straight here, I move this note here It's the same note, just played on the string, and I add a chromatic note before I go to the last note. Then I go back to the original placement of the motive in the scale, but I repeat the first 2-note group. And then, instead of playing the original note here, I swap that note out for a higher note. Changing a note in the motive can be a great way of creating something that sounds quite different, but is still more or less the same notes. Then I sequence the motive even higher in the scale, but I start with bending into the first note of the motive. Instead of I play and adding something extra. Then I just play something that's not a part of the motive. Then I play the inverted motive. Remember, this means just playing the opposite, going up instead of down. But I'm adding a chromatic note between the notes I'm playing. And then I end by playing a chromatic note below the ending note and going back. Then I go 2 notes up the scale and play the motive here. But I add a chromatic note, and instead of going there, I move this note to the other string to change positions. This makes it easier to go a bit further up. Then I play the motive up here, but I displace the motive to the second 8 notes at the bar, slide into the first note and repeat the first note. Then I play something else, and I go back to the motive again, but then I end it with something else. Then I play the motive in the same place a third time, but now I change the rhythm a bit and I repeat the third note, but before the repetition I add a chromatic approach note pattern. This pattern is scale note above, chromatic above, to chromatic below, to target note, and then I complete the motive. So this becomes, and then I just add a few other notes to complete the phrase. If you want to know more about using motivic development techniques for improvisation, check out my book Improvising with Motives. It has a lot of information about every technique I've demonstrated in this lesson and many other techniques as well. It also shows the techniques used on many different motives over various musical styles. Check out the link in the description below.